Well, hello again. It's another week. Chapter 3 Interpersonal Communication. I hope everybody enjoyed last week's lesson. I do appreciate the feedback on my Johari window. Send it to your friends if you want. Make yourself one. Make yourself one. Send it out. See what people think. Um, I hope I'm as good as most of you said I was. That was a nice compliment. Perception. Perception and communication. What we perceive is often not reality. Um, when I read this, I was reminded of a story about the Korean War. The Army first decided to start using uh, debriefings. And five guys had got caught in a battle on the wrong side of the line. They all fought, got their way back. They had a psychologist interview them, and each one of them had a different story. And so he said, "You must be lying because none of you tell me the same story, and you were all together." And one of the senior guy said, "If you've ever been in battle, you know you only see what you see. You don't see what everybody else sees." So each perceived it differently, although all perceived a harrowing experience. And getting the debriefer to understand that their perception was not a false reality, but it was their reality. So, meaning is at the heart of all communication. What did you mean to say? How many times have you felt bad because someone misunderstood you? In the heat of the moment, you said something you didn't mean that way, but it sounded that way. Or just in daily conversation, my wife will say, "You all right?" "Yeah." "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." "Well, you sound like something's wrong." "Well, nothing's wrong. It's just the way I said it." So, we have to worry about perception. We have to always remember that it is something that is um, active and selective. So what do I mean by that? It's always going on. It's there's always something that we have to excuse me, focus our attention on. And we choose certain things to focus our attention on. When when you walk into your parents' house at holiday time and you can smell that your favorite meal cooking, you kind of like you look forward to that when you got there, and when you walked in, you focused on that. Ooh, that smells good. Much of it is external. What's external? Others internal. You're tired. You have class today. You have to listen to this boring old man give a lecture on a video, and you were up all night because you have a sick child or because you worked or whatever the case may be. You have to select what's important and what's not important to focus on your perception and what stands out. A lot of times we put something in bold print or highlight it because we make it stand out. We want your attention drawn to there. Now, culture has a lot to do with perception. As you probably have noticed right now, culture is one of my favorite um, subjects to talk about. And a collectivist society, meaning where everybody puts family and group first, values loyalty and face saving. An individualistic culture values assertiveness and competitiveness. So if you have somebody from the Western world go to the Eastern world and they're assertive, they're going to notice that. Their perception is this person is rude and arrogant. Not all of them. I hate generalizations, but sometimes you have to speak in generalizations to teach. As rude and arrogant. Whereas if you have somebody from a collectivist culture come to the West, and you might think that they are shy or humble, which are good, generally good characteristic. But you also might think that they're wimpy. They won't stand up for themselves. Well, it's the perception of where you were raised on what you think is important. Now, we have cognitive structures we call schemata. And schemata is basically a idea that you have of how something should work. For example, birthday parties. Here in the United States, my wife, my daughter works at a local place, and it was somebody's birthday, so they bought cupcakes and brought them in. Happy birthday to the person. In Germany, I was working in Germany, and my secretary showed up with a cake, and it's like, "What's the cake for?" She says, "My birthday." And it's like, if I did that in the States, they'd think I was pretty arrogant. If we had a class and I showed up one day and said, "It's my birthday, here's a cake, celebrate with me," you'd probably eat the cake but think I was an idiot. Culturally, that's how they believe a birthday should be. Culturally, we believe it should be different. What's right, what's wrong? Neither one is wrong. They're both right. Depends on where you come from. Now we have prototype schematas. Teachers, supervisors, friends. These are the qualities we look for in that person. And we have, teachers. Hopefully, I'm not the worst you've had, but we have teachers that we think are fantastic, and that's the schemata we use to measure all the other teachers with. This is how they should be. We have personal constructs. We place things along a continuum. Is that person kind or unkind? Is that person attractive or unattractive? Is that a responsible person or an irresponsible person? We have stereotypes. A lot of people say, "I don't stereotype." Most of us stereotype. It helps us cognitively place somebody in a little cubicle or cubbyhole that allows our brain to operate instead of trying to see everything. I, try to guard against stereotypes. I won't say I don't have them, but I have them like everybody else does. But for example, I've applied for a full-time teaching job. Not here, but I got eliminated early, and somebody, told me that, well, you're ex-military. And so since you're ex-military, they automatically assume that you're conservative because most ex-military are conservative. So instead of giving me a chance to find out what I am, they just eliminated me from the pool because they automatically thought something. Stereotypes can be detrimental. They can be good, for safety, that type of stuff. But on the other hand, it can be detrimental for safety. If you see somebody that you perceive as a threat, whether you know they are or not, are you safer? Yeah, probably. But on the other hand, is it fair to that person? Scripts, sequence of events of how you think it should be. I grew up as a handshaker, shake my hand. When I was working for the Cottonmouths one time, this guy came in and wanted to talk to the boss, and I called him on the phone. Jerome said, "Send him in." So I said, Jerome said, "Send him in," and the guy went in. Excuse me. And he was huffy and puffy when he went in. It was like, I don't know what the hell's wrong with him. A few minutes later, he came out and said, "Sorry," and he walked out the door. And I looked at Jerome and was like, "What the hell was that about?" Excuse me. What was that about? And he said, "Well, he said that you were arrogant." And I said, "Why did he think I was arrogant?" He said, "Well, he tried to shake your hand and you wouldn't shake his hand." Well, the guy didn't know was I was legally blind. I couldn't see his hand. And so Jerome told him I was blind and I couldn't see it. So then he felt bad. So how is it supposed to happen? Nowadays, it's not appropriate to shake hands. It's social distancing and da 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 da. Things we have to worry about. So how do you perceive it should be? What script do you have in your mind for an interaction or a conversation with somebody? Now, interpretation is important in perception. How do you make sense of it all? How do you make sense of everything that's going on? Well, you've grown up through a certain culture and through certain phases and through certain things to interpret things certain ways. Now, there's the attributions of it is like locus. Is it internal or external? Why did it happen that way? Internal control. I had control over it. I messed up. External control. I had no control. The example the book uses is one that many of you are familiar with. I passed a test. I did great on a test because I studied and I'm smart and da 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 da. I failed a test because the teacher sucked. Excuse me a minute. Oh, I gotta sneeze. Pardon me. I'm not going to start this video over, folks. You're going to have to live with that. Stability. Um, the factors of the person. Are they a type A personality? They will always be a type A personality. Are they irritable? Why are they irritable? Well, right now they have a headache, or they didn't sleep well, they have a sick kid, or a sick family member. um, Bills are due. So sometimes some of the factors that you attribute to a person in a situation are stable, and other times they're unstable, they're flighty. You have to calculate that in there. Specificity. um, how's this person in each situation? Um, are they generous to a fault? They're generous all the time, or are they generous to their children but stingy with everybody else, or generous to their spouse, or generous to their parents but not some other people? The book says, specific, they're a big spender all the time, or on specific things, they're either a global big spender on specific things, or on everything, excuse me, or specific things. They spend a lot of money on this item, that object, that hobby. Responsibility, within personal control or without. You know, did I have control over the situation? I'm driving a car, going down the road. I haven't driven in a long time, but I'm driving a car, going down the road. It's raining, and I'm doing 90 miles an hour. I have a wreck. Did I have control? Well, a lot of people, well, it was the weather related. No, you were doing 90 in a 45, and it was raining, so you had control over it. So talking to a person and trying to understand their perception, you have to understand: do they have responsibility? Are they taking responsibility? I'm trying to pay attention. I'm listening. But I have these other things that are messing with me. Attribution error, self-serving bias. A lot of times, and talked about at the beginning of the chapter, talked about it again here. I did well on the test because I'm smart. I did poorly on the test because the teacher was bad. That's a self-serving bias. Listen to the person talking. When you're trying to communicate with somebody, are you being that way or are they being that way? A lot of times we don't want to take the responsibility for our own actions. We have different influences on perception. Physiology. How are you affects your perception. How are you feeling affects your perception. And think about it. How many times have you just felt poorly and you couldn't concentrate, or you misunderstood somebody because you didn't feel well, or had started an argument, or an argument got started with you and somebody because the way they said something and you took it wrong, or the way you said something and they took it wrong. No, that's not what I meant. Well, that sounds like it. And so, how you are physically, your physiology, expectations. You know, what do you expect of the situation? Your expectations can turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy. The book uses an example of that your friend wants you to meet somebody, and they're great, and they got a great sense of humor, and they're funny, and they're da 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 da. So expect that, and sometimes it happens because that's what you expected. Other times, well, they're lazy and they're a bum and da 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 da, and you label them with that, and that's how you see them, whether they are or not. Age is something that affects perception. Somebody that's older like me has a lot more life experiences. I've seen a lot of the world. I see things a lot differently than somebody your age does because I have a broader schemata of things that are out there. I've seen different things and I understand them differently. I'm not saying that I'm better than you because of that, because sometimes I get set in my ways and I stereotype a certain thing a certain way, and that's the way I see it, whereas you might have a more open experience of it. And you may be right in that particular case, and I may be wrong. So don't get that statement that older da 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 da. I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying it's different. Culture affects it. Go back to what I talked about on the birthday cake. Social marginalization, social location. A marginalized person sees the world differently than a non-marginalized person. A marginalized person has to understand the rules of the dominant group and their group. A person in the dominant group does not have to understand the rules of the marginalized group. Gender differences. Women see the world differently than men, and transgender see it differently than non-transgender, and homosexuals see it differently than heterosexuals. What brought you to your point in life, and Julia Wood has something called the standpoint theory of communication. And it basically says that you see the world the way you do because of everything that has affected you to this point. And you are shy in public because you've been chastised in public. You are adventurous because you grew up in an adventurous family. You're guarded because you grew up threatened. All these things that happen to you create your perception, your standpoint. What is your racial or ethnic group? It affects how you see the world. And in that aspect of it, you have to understand if you're trying to communicate with somebody from a different racial or ethnic group, how do they see what you're saying? Roles. What roles were you exposed to? Man is the breadwinner, woman is the homemaker. Yes and no. I mean, in the olden days, that's the way it was. Nowadays, it's not that way so much. But oftentimes, there's an old saying, a man may work from sun to sun, but a woman's work is never done because many women have two jobs, whatever they have outside the house and in the house, because culturally we have not gotten beyond that yet. So what roles is this person you're talking to been brought up with, and what standards do they think are appropriate? Cognitive complexity, we have a number of different schemata. Adults have more than children do because we have been exposed to more. As I was saying earlier, I'm older, I have more than you do because I've been exposed to more. We have to be person-centered. We have to worry about that person we're talking to. Tailor the message to them. And you do it all the time. Think about it. If you're going to ask your parents for $20 or you're going to ask your friend for $20, would you use the same message? No, you don't. Because you have a different relationship with them. What type of self are you talking to? What type of self do you have? What is you? Are you secure? Are you fearful? that interferes or changes perception. Social media. Social media has become more and more popular over the years. And because it's more and more popular over the years, it has affected how we communicate more and more. I get upset when I hear students talking about, well, I got broke up. He texted me and broke up. It's like, that's just like no nerve. But it's beyond my generation. I don't do that stuff. What social media do you use? I have a few. Most of you think that I'm an old fogey, and you're probably right. I have Facebook and I have LinkedIn. I have Snapchat. Don't use it too often, but I have it. Are there others out there? Oh, there's a lot more out there. Are there some of your generation uses that I've never heard of? I'm sure there are. Are the ones that I use you consider, well, that's old people stuff? You may or may not. I don't know. But what is your cultural membership in that group? People like on Facebook, only people I know, friends on Facebook, are people I physically know. And that to me is a smaller group and a bond. But there are the people that's like they friend everybody they can friend. And culturally, I don't see it that way. What's your expectations when you send somebody a message? Do you expect them to reply quickly, or the next day or two? Okay. And some people like have their phones, they live by their phones. Every time they get a message, they reply to it, whether they're eating dinner with somebody else or whatever. And a lot of times they expect the same from others. Other people, they have their phone around, they get a text message, they reply to it when they feel like it. What is your perception? What is their perception? What's the perception of the person you're trying to communicate with? If you expect them to be immediate reply and they're not, what message does that give you? Sense of space. People are on social networking anywhere, anytime, social media. And, a lot of it's good. If it weren't for social media, we would not be able to have this conversation. And that's fine. But, one day I was sitting on the front porch scrolling through my Facebook or something. My wife came out and said something to me. And I kept scrolling. Then after she walked in, I realized how rude I was. And so next time she came out, I put my phone down. Because that's what I want somebody to do to me. Not keep scrolling and yeah, yeah. So, it interferes with interpersonal communication in the present, but sometimes it's great to have that communication, if you're by yourself or if you're alone or if you haven't heard from somebody in a while. But some people take it to the extreme, you know. I've seen people couldn't go to the bathroom without their phone. Anywhere, anytime, but sometimes to me it's just kind of strange to have it like that. Remember that all perceptions are partial and subjective. Whatever perception you have of something is a perception you have, but it may not be the same perception I have. And it may change 5 minutes from now. Don't try to read minds. Don't try to, this is what they're thinking. If you want to know what somebody's thinking, talk to them about it. Check your perceptions with others. You might think somebody is I've noticed you're not talkative lately. What's going on? They may not have noticed it. It may be nothing to them, but there may be something pulling them away. What are the facts and what did you infer? Facts are I am an older white guy that wears glasses, that's blind, that's been in the military, that's married, that's got kids. Y'all know those facts. What did you infer? What did you, like I told you about the job application? They inferred that I was conservative. Whether they know it or not is a fact, they don't know. Watch out for self-serving biases. Don't when you're talking, make sure that you are not using self-serving. I passed that test because I'm great. No, you may have passed that test because it was easy. You may have passed that test because you really worked hard. You may have failed that test because you didn't apply yourself. And it's the same for other people. If you're having a conversation with somebody else and the perception of their message to you, yeah, man, I failed that test because that teacher sucks. Well, maybe you both failed the test, but maybe you were both out partying instead of studying, or maybe the teacher wasn't good, or maybe you did great and they did poorly. You have to watch for self-serving bias and watch people that take responsibility for their own actions and take responsibility for yours. Watch labels. Labels are not always correct. Conservative, Democrat, Republican, liberal, old, young. I mean, old is a matter of perception. My mom had her 90th birthday last week. To her, I'm young. To y'all, I'm ancient. So, watch labels. Don't be labeling people without knowing the facts. And finally, there is a link here to a video that I think you might find amusing. It's about perception. And since I'm a blind person, I thought it was great. But, let's hope you do. So that is chapter 3, my friends. I will post this. I will post a discussion. I will post the PowerPoints. And hopefully you will gain some insight from it. If you need me, call me. My number's on the syllabus. Email me. We'll chat. Have a great day. Have a great week. Bye-bye.